The morning sun had barely risen over Atlanta when Malik Carter stepped off the bus and adjusted the strap of his worn toolbox. The cold metal handle pressed into his calloused palm, a reminder of the work he'd done for years, sometimes for recognition, often for survival, always with pride. Malik wasn't the kind of man who led with his voice. He led with his craftsmanship, the kind that came from long nights studying diagrams and long days fixing engines no one else could decipher. Yet today was different. Today he carried hope tucked between his ribs, steady but cautious, like a heartbeat that had been bruised too many times but refused to stop. Just ahead, the polished building of Phoenix Automotive Industries rose like a glass monument. Its glossy walls reflected the sky as if trying to claim its color. Malik paused at the entrance, staring at the logo embossed on the revolving doors. He had applied for a position as a senior diagnostic engineer, a job he was more than qualified for. But the industry didn't always reward skill the way it claimed to. He knew that from experience. But he also knew he had to try. Inside, the lobby was drenched in the scent of leather and cold air, the kind of atmosphere meant to signal luxury. Malik approached the receptionist, a young woman who gave him a polite, if slightly confused, glance when she saw his toolbox. "Good morning," he said gently. "I'm here for the engineering evaluation. Malik Carter." She checked her tablet, eyebrows lifting when she found his name on the list. "Of course, Mr. Carter. You're early. The evaluations start in an hour, but you can wait in the seating area." Malik nodded with gratitude, settling into a sleek chair that looked more decorative than functional. Around him, well-dressed candidates in tailored suits checked their watches, whispered to each other, or typed on tablets. Some glanced at him, at the dark skin, the simple clothes, the toolbox, and their eyes slid away just as quickly, as though they had already decided his chances. But Malik wasn't here for their approval. He closed his eyes and breathed. He thought of his father, who had worked under the hood of cars in a cramped garage behind their old brick house. He remembered the nights when customers looked at Malik, then at his father, then at the car and whispered doubts. He remembered his father's response. "Let the work speak louder than the skin." Malik lived by that. Always had. A sudden stir rippled across the lobby. Employees straightened. Candidates stood. Two security guards approached the revolving doors and held them open as a tall, broad-shouldered man strode in wearing a deep navy suit and the kind of confidence that seemed to echo off the walls. His silver hair was combed perfectly into place, his shoes gleaming like untouched mirrors. His steps were deliberate, as if the ground existed only to hold him up. This was Richard Hale, the CEO. The air shifted the way it does when someone powerful wants everyone to know it. Conversations died. People pressed their backs straighter against their chairs. Hale scanned the room with eyes sharp enough to cut glass. He wasn't smiling. He didn't need to. Power had a way of filling the room without ever softening its edges. His gaze finally landed on Malik. For a brief moment, Hale's expression lingered on him with something between surprise and distaste, as though Malik's presence disrupted the aesthetic of the room. His eyes drifted down to the toolbox, and one corner of his mouth twitched, not out of humor but dismissal. Malik had seen that look before. Hale approached the receptionist. "Are these today's candidates?" His voice carried a polished arrogance, the kind of tone that assumed every answer would already align with his expectations. "Yes, sir. They're here for the senior engineering evaluation." "Senior engineering," Hale repeated, his eyes flickering back to Malik again with unmasked skepticism. The receptionist sensed the tension and quickly added, "Mr. Carter checked in early." Hale stepped closer to Malik, staring down at him. "What's your background?" Malik kept his voice steady. 15 years in advanced automotive diagnostics, specialized in high-performance European engines. "I've worked with." "Self-taught," Hale interjected. "I completed certification courses at." "But not a university degree," Hale said, as though the absence itself answered everything. Malik didn't react. He had come too far to let a man's ego rattle him. "My work speaks for itself." Hale chuckled, the kind of laugh that didn't come from amusement but from disbelief. We'll see about that. Without another word, Hale turned and walked down the hall, expecting people to part like waves before him. After a few minutes, an assistant escorted the candidates into a spacious workshop. Except, workshop wasn't the right word. It was more like a technology cathedral. Sleek tool stations, bright LED lights, dozens of high-end vehicles lifted on hydraulic platforms. Malik's eyes softened with admiration. He loved spaces like this. In the center of the room, draped with an almost ceremonial cover, was a low-slung shape. The assistant gestured toward it. This year's evaluation will involve a practical assessment. You'll each be assigned a task. Mr. Hale himself will introduce the challenge. The candidates whispered among themselves. Some looked excited, others nervous. Malik remained still. Moments later, Hale strode into the room, clasping his hands behind his back. Good morning. Today you will each complete a single diagnostic task. But one of you, he paused for dramatic effect. One of you will face a far more stimulating challenge. He pulled the cover with a flourish, revealing a crimson Ferrari 812 Superfast. The car gleamed even under the plain white workshop lights. Its curves seemed alive. Its engine, Malik could feel, held a heartbeat waiting to be awakened. Gasps echoed through the room. Even Malik felt his pulse quicken. This Ferrari, Hale said, his voice grand and theatrical, has a complex electrical issue that my team has been unable to resolve. A very complicated problem. A problem that requires a certain level of sophistication. His eyes slid toward Malik, deliberately, slowly. If any candidate can fix this vehicle, the evaluation ends immediately. You will be offered the engineering position on the spot. And, he paused again, savoring the moment. I'll give you the Ferrari. It's yours. Shock erupted among the candidates. Some laughed. Others murmured in disbelief. A Ferrari? It sounded absurd, ridiculous. Hale held up a hand. Of course, it's an impossible challenge. Consider it a test of how you respond to failure. The attention in the room drifted toward Malik. Hale smirked. Mr. Carter, since you brought your personal equipment, why don't you try first? A few candidates exchanged glances. One snickered under his breath. Another whispered, he's setting him up. Malik felt heat rise in his chest. Not from embarrassment, but from insult. It was obvious what Hale was doing. Turning him into a spectacle, a theatrical moment to amuse the room. The black man with the toolbox, the man who dared to walk into this ivory tower. What better entertainment than watching him fail? Malik inhaled slowly. His father had taught him that anger was fuel, but it had to be controlled. Otherwise it burned the wrong things. He stepped forward, placing his toolbox on the ground beside the Ferrari. The room fell silent. Hale watched with arms crossed, waiting for Malik to stumble. Malik didn't hurry. He slid into the driver's seat, inhaling the soft leather, listening to the tiny electrical hums of the onboard systems. He didn't need a degree to feel machinery. He understood it the way some people understand music. He pressed the ignition. Nothing, not even a click, that told him more than 1,000 diagnostic screens could. He opened the dashboard panel and studied the wiring. He checked the fuse box. He noted the faint scent of burnt insulation, barely noticeable unless you knew what to look for. 5 minutes passed, then 10, then 20. Whispers rose among the candidates. Hale smirked, leaning in toward one of the managers. He's lost. Should have sent him back to the lobby. At 25 minutes, Malik finally rose, wiping his hands on a small cloth he kept folded in his toolbox. He turned to Hale. I can fix it, he said calmly. Hale raised an eyebrow. Can you now? But not with the tools you have here. That earned a few laughs. Hale stepped closer. Excuses already? I'm stating facts, Malik said firmly. The car has a microfractured wire in the ignition harness. Whoever tried to fix it before soldered it incorrectly. The current isn't reaching the starter relay. I can repair it, but I need proper microsoldering tools and a heat-resistant fiber sleeve. The room fell quiet. Several engineers blinked. One of them muttered, How did he diagnose that without removing the harness? Hale's smile faded. Malik continued, and whoever worked on it didn't recalibrate the onboard voltage regulator after the repair attempt. That's why the sensor readings look normal, but the engine won't start. One of the junior engineers looked at Hale nervously. Sir, he's right. We tried fixing it last week. Hale shot him a glare so sharp he stopped breathing. The CEO turned back to Malik with a tight grin. Even if you're correct, you still need equipment we don't keep on hand. I brought my own, Malik said, kneeling to open the second compartment of his toolbox. A compartment most people didn't notice. Inside was a compact microsoldering kit, a fiber sleeve roll, and precision clamps. The room murmured. Hale's jaw tightened. Malik returned to the car without another word. His hands moved with purpose. Each motion was deliberate, quiet, confident. He wasn't performing for the room. He was conversing with the car, listening to its history, answering its needs. 40 minutes later, he pressed the ignition again. The Ferrari's engine roared to life. Angry, powerful, magnificent. Gasps exploded across the room. The engineers flinched in shock. A few candidates stood as if witnessing a miracle. Even the assistant covered her mouth. The engine purred, alive and flawless. Hale's face drained of color. Malik stepped out of the car, closing the door gently. He wiped his hands again, looking at the CEO without arrogance, only quiet certainty. You said the Ferrari was mine if I could fix it. The silence in the room was suffocating. Hale stared at the car, at Malik, at the stunned faces around him. He had crafted a spectacle to humiliate the black man in front of a room full of candidates. But the universe had flipped the script. For the first time since entering the building, Hale's confidence faltered. Malik didn't gloat. He simply stood there, dignified, shoulders straight, waiting, not for permission, but for accountability. Because he had done the impossible, and everyone in the room knew it. For a long, breathless moment, no one moved. The Ferrari idled in the background, its engine humming like a victory anthem, rolling through the spacious workshop with a resonance that felt almost spiritual. Malik stood tall, steady, unshaken. He didn't need applause. The truth was applause enough. But humiliation has a way of cornering pride, and Richard Hale was not a man accustomed to corners. His gaze darted from Malik to the vehicle, then to the watching crowd. His jaw clenched, and for a second the silver-haired CEO resembled a man drowning in a room full of witnesses. Then came the laughter, soft at first, then rising in timid spurts from a few of the other candidates, the kind of nervous reaction people have when witnessing power slip. Hale whipped his head toward them, silencing the room instantly. The laughter died like a candle under water. Hale adjusted his suit jacket, smoothing the fabric along his chest. Well, he said with a brittle attempt at composure. I suppose that was impressive. The words sounded like they scraped his throat on the way out. Malik didn't respond. He didn't need to. Hale cleared his throat sharply. Let's discuss this in my office. Privately. But before Malik could step forward, one of the senior engineers, a younger man with sandy hair and an expression caught between awe and relief, spoke up timidly. Sir, with all due respect, the entire evaluation group heard your offer. Another engineer chimed in, emboldened by the first. The terms were clear. If any candidate fixed the Ferrari, they'd get the job and the vehicle. Hale shot them both a look so cold it could frost glass. The second engineer recoiled visibly. The room stiffened again, every spine locking into a straight line, as if bracing for Hale's wrath. But Hale couldn't undo what had already happened, not with an entire room bearing witness. He exhaled slowly through his nose. Fine, he muttered. Mr. Carter, follow me. The rest of you go to conference room A for the written assessment. We'll resume once this matter is resolved. Malik grabbed his toolbox and followed Hale out of the workshop. As they walked through the wide hallways decorated with glossy photographs of sports cars and executives shaking hands, Malik could feel the tension radiating from the CEO like heat off an engine. The man's stride was stiff, his breathing shallow. His pride had been bruised, and bruised pride made unpredictable decisions. Inside Hale's office, an expansive room with tall windows and a view of the city, Hale shut the door a little too forcefully. He circled behind his massive wooden desk, a slab of polished dark walnut that probably cost more than Malik's childhood home. Hale leaned both hands on the desk, staring down at its surface before slowly lifting his gaze. "Let me be clear," he began, voice tightening. "I made that offer because I did not believe anyone could fix that car. Certainly not on the spot. Certainly not with a personal toolbox." The way he said the words carried a familiar weight, disbelief wrapped in prejudice. Malik didn't flinch. "But I did fix it." "Yes," Hale said through clenched teeth. "You did. But there are considerations." "What kind?" Hale gestured vaguely with his hand. "Legal, financial, logistical. You don't simply hand over a high-value asset like a Ferrari based on an evaluation stunt. It's complicated." Malik held his gaze. "It didn't sound complicated when you said it." Hale bristled. "Be careful, Carter. Don't mistake a momentary success for leverage." Malik remained still, silent, unthreatened. His calmness unsettled Hale more than anger would have. The CEO straightened his posture, adopting the tone reserved for corporate lectures. "Look, I admit you demonstrated skill. I'll acknowledge that. And because you outperformed expectations, I'm prepared to offer you a position, junior technician, starting salary." "No," Malik said, voice low but firm. Hale blinked, genuinely taken aback. "Excuse me? That's not the position I applied for," Malik said. "And that's not the agreement you made." Hale's face flushed. "You think you can dictate terms?" "I think you can honor your own words," Malik replied. In front of a room full of witnesses, Hale's lips thinned into a sharp line. He walked to the window, staring down at the city sprawled below, hands clasped behind him. He looked like a man trying to wrestle control back from an unexpected defeat. Finally, he turned. "Let's speak plainly," he said. "You're talented. I'll give you that. But Phoenix Automotive is a world-class institution. We need people with pedigrees, with degrees, with polished backgrounds. Clients want to see a certain image when they walk into our engineering department. They want confidence. They want elegance. They want a white face." Malik asked quietly. Hale stiffened. "I didn't say that. You didn't have to." The silence between them thickened. Malik stepped forward, placing his toolbox on the floor beside him. "I earned that job, and I earned that car. You don't get to erase that because you didn't expect someone like me to succeed." Hale's nostrils flared. He sank into his chair, rubbing his temples. The leather creaked under his weight. "This is becoming more trouble than it's worth," he muttered. "You're the one who made the offer," Malik said. "You wanted a spectacle. You got one." Hale glared at him. "And what do you think is going to happen if I give you that Ferrari? You think people won't talk? You think they won't ask questions?" A candidate strolls in off the street with a toolbox and walks away with a car worth hundreds of thousands. "That's your problem," Malik said. "Not mine." Hale drummed his fingers on the desk, every tap sharp and irritated. "I could make this very difficult for you." "You already tried," Malik replied. "And I'm still here." The CEO's anger flared, then sputtered, like a fire being smothered by its own smoke. Finally, Hale exhaled sharply. "Fine. I'll have legal draft a conditional release for the vehicle. Don't expect it to come without restrictions." "Restrictions?" Malik asked. "Standard procedure," Hale said with a dismissive wave. "Ownership transfer requirements, liability clauses, non-disclosure agreements." "I'm not signing anything that forfeits my rights," Malik said. Hale's face hardened. "You don't get to negotiate." "I'm not negotiating," Malik replied evenly. "I'm stating a boundary." Hale shot up from his chair. "Do you understand who you're talking to?" "Yes," Malik said. "A man who made a promise he never intended to keep." For the first time, Hale didn't have a comeback. His jaw worked silently before he turned away, pacing in short, jerky steps like a man trying to keep his world from collapsing. A knock on the door interrupted the tension. The assistant peeked inside hesitantly. Sir, I'm sorry, but there's a situation in the workshop. Hale snapped. What now? It's the engineering team, she said, swallowing nervously. They're asking if they can speak with Mr. Carter. Hale froze. Speak with him? Why? She hesitated. They want to know how he diagnosed the issue so fast. And they're asking if he'd be willing to help troubleshoot a similar problem on the McLaren prototype. Hale's eyes widened in disbelief. Malik remained calm. The assistant continued. Also, some of the candidates asked for his contact information. They said they've never seen anything like what he did. A few said he inspired them. Hale felt the humiliation deepen, spreading like ink in water. Thank you, Malik told the assistant gently. She smiled, an expression filled with respect, then slipped out. Hale didn't sit again. He stood behind his desk, seething silently. You're making this impossible, he murmured. No, Malik said softly. I'm just not moving out of your way. Hale stared at him with a long, unreadable expression, then finally gestured toward the door. Get out of my office. I'll contact you when paperwork is ready. Malik didn't need more than that. He picked up his toolbox, walked out of the office, and closed the door behind him without looking back. The hallway felt lighter, as if the air itself had thanked him for leaving that room. As he walked toward the workshop again, he caught glimpses of employees watching him with curiosity, admiration, or a mix of both. He didn't parade. He didn't boast. He simply walked with the same quiet dignity he'd carried all his life. When he re-entered the workshop, the room erupted in a gentle flurry of movement. Engineers approached him with questions, compliments, and genuine interest. How did you spot the harness issue so fast? That voltage regulator recalibration. How did you know it needed adjustment without testing? Can you show us the technique you used? Malik answered patiently, generously. He loved this. Not the attention, but the shared passion. The hunger to learn. The respect between people who understood the language of machines. 2 hours passed before he realized how much time had gone by. When he finally stepped outside the building, the sun had climbed higher, warming the pavement. The city buzzed in the distance. Malik took a deep breath, feeling both exhausted and energized. He had walked into Phoenix Automotive expecting an evaluation. Instead, he had challenged a system, shattered expectations, and left with something more powerful than a promise of a car. He had left with his dignity intact. But Malik also knew something else. Men like Richard Hale didn't take humiliation lightly. They didn't surrender power quietly. This wasn't over. In fact, it was only the beginning. The next morning arrived with the kind of quiet calm that usually precedes a storm. Malik sat at his small kitchen table, sipping black coffee from a mug chipped near the handle. The apartment around him was modest but clean, filled with carefully organized tools, engine manuals, and reminders of a life carved out of resilience. Sunlight filtered through the blinds, striping the floor with soft golden lines. It should have been a peaceful morning. But Malik's thoughts were heavy. He knew Richard Hale, men like him, men in his position, didn't accept embarrassment. And yesterday, Malik hadn't just corrected him. He had dismantled the very foundation of Hale's arrogance in front of an audience Hale valued more than anything. His employees, his candidates, his reputation. Malik stared at the phone on his table. No calls yet. No messages. No updates about the Ferrari paperwork or the job. But he knew something was coming. When his phone buzzed at 9:32 a.m., Malik didn't jump. He simply took another slow sip of coffee before checking the screen. Private number. He answered calmly. This is Malik. A clipped voice responded. Mr. Carter, this is Helen Ward from Phoenix Automotive's legal department. Mr. Hale has requested your presence at headquarters at 11 o'clock sharp. We have documents ready for review. Malik didn't miss the tone. It wasn't friendly. It wasn't even neutral. Felt like a summons. Thank you, Malik said. I'll be there. He ended the call, finished his coffee, and stood. He changed into clean work pants, a dark shirt, and boots. Nothing flashy. Nothing meant to impress. Just himself. 2 hours later, Malik entered the gleaming lobby of Phoenix Automotive again. This time, people noticed him differently. Some nodded. Some gave small smiles. The receptionist straightened when she saw him and said, "Good morning, Mr. Carter. They're expecting you." She sounded respectful, far more than yesterday. As Malik walked through the building, he overheard whispers. "That's him. The Ferrari guy. He fixed it in under an hour." He embarrassed Hale. His quiet pace didn't change. When he reached the legal department, a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and stiff posture met him. "Mr. Carter," she said, extending a cold hand. "I'm Helen. Please follow me." She led him into a conference room where a stack of documents lay neatly arranged on the table. The thick packet looked like a contract mixed with a trap. Helen gestured for him to sit. "Mr. Hale has approved your vehicle transfer and job appointment," she said. "These documents outline the terms." Malik skimmed the first page and froze. There were restrictions. Serious ones. The first document detailed the Ferrari transfer, but included mandatory conditions. He could not sell the car for 10 years. He had to keep it insured through a company Hale's board was affiliated with. He had to sign a clause preventing him from speaking publicly about how he acquired it. The second document was worse. A non-disclosure agreement barring him from telling anyone about the events of yesterday, including the details of the challenge. The third document was a job offer, but not for the senior engineering role. Instead, it was titled Technical Consultant, Provisional, with a reduced salary and a 6-month probation period. It also included language suggesting they could terminate him without reason and require him to return the Ferrari if they claimed any aspect of the transfer agreement was violated. Helen watched him carefully. "Everything is standard procedure," she said with a tight smile. Malik placed his hands flat on the table. "No," he said. "This isn't standard." She stiffened. "Excuse me?" Malik slid the top page toward her. "This clause prevents me from talking about an event witnessed by more than 30 people. That's not standard." Helen kept her face neutral. "It protects the company from misrepresentation. It protects the CEO from embarrassment," Malik said evenly. She said nothing. Malik continued, "And this isn't the job I applied for. It's the position Mr. Hale believes best suits your experience." Malik leaned back in his chair. "So after I proved myself yesterday, he still thinks I'm not qualified for the job he promised." Helen folded her hands. "Mr. Carter, please understand. Mr. Hale has many responsibilities. His decisions are influenced by bias," Malik interrupted softly. "That's the truth." Helen inhaled sharply, her jaw tightening. "If you refuse to sign, you forfeit both the job and the vehicle." "I know," Malik said. "And you should also know," she added with a certain coldness, "that Mr. Hale is prepared to take legal action if you attempt to defame the company." Malik stared at her for a long moment. Then he picked up the pen on the table. For a second, Helen's eyes brightened. Then Malik set the pen back down gently, deliberately. "I'm not signing," he said. Her mouth parted slightly in surprise, maybe even disbelief. She had expected a fight, maybe tears, maybe anger. She hadn't expected quiet defiance. "You're making a mistake," she said. "No," Malik replied. "I'm correcting one." She frowned deeply. "Mr. Carter, I strongly advise you to reconsider." "I already did." Helen exhaled slowly. "Very well. I'll inform Mr. Hale." She left the room in a hurry, her heels clicking hard against the polished floor. Malik remained seated, calm, waiting. 5 minutes later, the conference room door opened with a sharp swing. Richard Hale stormed in. He wasn't the composed executive from yesterday. His tie was slightly loosened. His eyes were sharp but tired. His steps were fast and angry. He slammed the door behind him and turned on Malik. "What is this?" he demanded, striding toward the table. "You refuse to sign?" "Yes." Hale slammed his palm on the documents. "These terms are more than fair. They're dishonest," Malik said quietly. "Dishonest," Hale repeated with a scoff. "You stroll in off the street with a toolbox, embarrass my team, embarrass me, And now you want to dictate terms? You think you're owed something? I think I'm owed what you promised, Malik said. No, Hale snapped, pointing a finger at him. I don't owe you anything. Malik looked him in the eyes. That's your problem. Hale recoiled as if struck. Malik continued, voice steady. You made a public promise, and now you're trying to bury it under paperwork and intimidation. Hale laughed bitterly. Intimidation? Don't flatter yourself. I am the CEO of a multinational corporation. You're a mechanic? Malik said. A black man without a degree? Someone you thought would fail so you could make a joke out of him. Hale's face darkened. Careful. I am being careful, Malik said softly. That's why I'm not signing anything that gives you control over my story. Hale paced the room, running a hand through his immaculate silver hair, messing it slightly. You are creating a situation you will regret. No, Malik said. I'm refusing to be controlled. Hale stopped pacing. His eyes narrowed. If you walk away from this deal, you walk away with nothing. Malik stood slowly, picking up his toolbox. I walked in with nothing yesterday, and I left with my dignity. That's worth more than your deal. He took a step toward the door. Don't you walk out of this room, Hale growled. Malik turned back. You don't decide when I walk away. You'll never get a job in this industry again, Hale snapped. I'll make sure of it. Malik paused. Do what you think you need to. I'll still sleep at night. Hale's face contorted with fury. You think you can challenge me and walk away clean? I'm not challenging you, Malik said. I'm exposing you. Hale swallowed hard. Malik continued. If I walk out, the story walks out with me, and it won't stay quiet. You wouldn't dare, Hale hissed. Malik opened the door. Try me. He stepped out into the hallway without looking back. But as he walked, he realized something. He wasn't alone. Engineers who had witnessed yesterday's challenge stood near their office doors, pretending to work but clearly listening. Some of them noted the tone of voices through the conference room walls. A few had already guessed what happened, and when Malik passed, they didn't avoid his eyes. They watched him with respect, admiration, solidarity. He walked down the hallway toward the exit. Every step felt heavier but also freer. He had given up the Ferrari. He had given up the job. He had given up the easy win. But he had kept the one thing no one, not even Richard Hale, could take: his honor. When he reached the lobby, the receptionist looked at him in confusion. Mr. Carter? Are you leaving? I thought. It didn't work out, Malik said gently. Her face fell. I'm so sorry. He gave her a small, kind smile. Don't be. He stepped out of the building into the sunlight, the warm air brushing against his face. He wasn't angry. He wasn't defeated. He was simply done. But while Malik believed he had closed the chapter, destiny had already flipped the page for him. Because the story of yesterday's miracle, the man who fixed the unfixable Ferrari, was spreading faster than Hale could control. And before the day ended, the truth was about to break open in a way no one expected. The police station buzzed with a low hum of radios and murmured conversations. But even in that steady noise, there was something about the mood that felt heavier than usual. Maybe it was the way the officers kept glancing at Victor, a man they had seen dragged into the station boasting about his Ferrari, now sitting with his head buried in his palms like a broken statue. Or maybe it was the quiet power radiating from Malik as he sat across the table, calm, collected, and dignified, refusing to let the situation erode his spirit. The detective assigned to the case stepped out momentarily, giving the room a brief silence that felt more like a verdict than any words that could come. Malik let out a long breath, steady and deliberate, the kind that came from someone who lived a lifetime understanding that he had to stay composed, even when wronged. Victor, however, trembled in a way that betrayed his crafted persona. Without his office, his authority, or the crowd that once hung on his every word, he looked painfully human, vulnerable, exposed, and undeniably guilty. But Malik felt no triumph in seeing him fall apart. That wasn't the point. He didn't need karmic spectacle. He just needed the truth acknowledged. When the detective finally returned, He placed a folder on the table with a firm thud. He didn't need to explain what was inside. The weight of the truth was already suffocating Victor. "Mr. Grayson," the detective said, voice measured, "your statement conflicts directly with video evidence and witness testimonies. At this point, we need to discuss the false report you filed." Victor looked up, eyes bloodshot. "Detective, you don't understand. He was touching my car. This is a Ferrari. And he had your permission." The detective cut in sharply. "And even if he hadn't, filing a false police report is a crime. You made a claim that could have escalated into something much worse. You understand the gravity of that, right?" Malik didn't move, didn't nod, didn't smirk. He simply watched Victor unravel, watched the consequences of arrogance settle on him like lead weights. "No, wait. Look," Victor stammered, switching to desperation. "I didn't mean to. Things got out of hand. It wasn't supposed to. I just thought." "You thought what?" The detective pushed. "That a black man near your car meant you needed to call the police? That's profiling, Mr. Grayson." Victor's mouth opened, but nothing came out. "You're lucky nothing happened to him before we got here," the detective added. "Lucky he's calm. Lucky this didn't escalate. But your intentions here, they matter. And your actions carry legal consequences." Victor slumped back, defeated. Malik finally spoke, his voice level. "Detective, I don't want a drawn-out case. I just want the truth on record. He lied. He tried to ruin my name in front of a crowd. He weaponized the police against me. I want acknowledgement of that. And I want it to stop here." The detective nodded. "And it will. But we still need to charge him with filing a false report. Whether you pursue anything civil afterward is up to you." "Malik," Victor whispered hoarsely, "please, I was wrong. I see that now. You gotta understand, I was under pressure, and I acted without thinking. Please don't ruin me over one mistake." Malik turned slowly to face him, and the look in his eyes held decades of resilience. "You almost ruined me over a lie. You mocked who I am. You tried to humiliate me, and when that didn't work, you tried to criminalize me. And now you're asking me for mercy." Victor swallowed hard. "Yes. Then you should have shown some first." The detective signaled for another officer. Victor was escorted out of the room, handcuffs clicking around his wrists. The contrast between how loudly he had mocked Malik earlier and how silently he was now being led away was poetic. But Malik didn't revel in it. He simply watched, expression unreadable, until Victor disappeared. The detective closed the door and turned to him. "You handled yourself with a lot of grace today. Not everyone can do that." Malik nodded once. "Didn't feel like I had a choice." "Still," the detective said, "you deserve acknowledgement. And if you ever want to pursue legal action, you have grounds." Malik inhaled deeply. "I'll think about it." After the paperwork, after the official statements, after the system finally caught up with the injustice that had unfolded, Malik stepped outside. The air felt lighter. The night sky had deepened but was dotted with stars, as if the world above was reminding him that brightness still existed even in dark moments. When he reached the parking lot, the Ferrari was still parked in the same spot, only now with officers maintaining distance around it, documenting the scene. One officer approached Malik. "You're Malik, right?" the officer asked. "Yes. Mr. Grayson's assistant left something for you. Said it was urgent." The officer handed Malik an envelope. There was no logo, no fancy print, just his name written neatly across the front. Malik opened it cautiously. Inside was a short note. "You earned it. I couldn't fix the car myself. The Ferrari's yours. Victor." Malik stared at the paper, stunned. He looked back at the officer as if to ask for context, but the officer simply shrugged. "He insisted we give it to you," the officer said. "Said it was yours now. Keys are in the center console. Paperwork's already signed." Malik blinked in disbelief. "Paperwork? Signed?" "Yup. Transferred ownership. He must have done it before the incident or maybe right after. But it's legal. You can verify it once the system updates." Malik exhaled sharply, half shock, half exhaustion. He wasn't sure if this was guilt, fear of consequences, or some twisted way for Victor to absolve himself. Maybe it was all three. But regardless, Malik didn't feel triumphant. He didn't feel like someone who had just won a luxury car. He felt like someone who had survived something that never should have happened in the first place. He approached the Ferrari slowly. The sleek red paint reflected the parking lot lights like molten metal. It was beautiful, but the weight of what it represented made his chest tighten. "So what now?" he murmured to himself. He opened the door. The leather seats hugged him gently as he settled in. The interior smelled like money, success, luxury. Even though moments ago it had been a symbol of accusation, power imbalance, and humiliation. He placed his hands on the steering wheel, but he didn't start the engine. Instead, he let the silence settle around him, listening to his heartbeat slow. He thought about his father, who used to tell him, "Son, no matter how they treat you, you treat yourself with dignity. Don't let the world convince you you're smaller than you are." He thought about his mother saying, "Grace is strength, Malik. Don't ever let anyone mistake it for weakness." And he thought about the mechanic shop where he'd learned to fix engines, the late nights spent tinkering with cars because he loved them, not because he wanted to prove anything to anyone. Maybe the Ferrari didn't symbolize Victor's guilt or his downfall. Maybe, in some twisted way, it symbolized Malik's unwavering composure, his refusal to fold under pressure, his refusal to let prejudice define who he was. He started the engine, purred like a symphony, but he wasn't driving away yet. Later that night, Malik knocked on a door in a quiet neighborhood across town. The porch lights flickered on. His younger brother, Jaden, answered, eyes widening. "Malik? Man, what are you doing here this late?" Malik motioned for him to step outside. Jaden frowned but followed him to the driveway, where the Ferrari sat gleaming under the streetlight. His jaw dropped. Bro, tell me this isn't what I think it is." Malik smiled faintly. "It's yours." Jaden's eyes nearly popped out. "Mine? You're kidding." "No," Malik said gently. "I don't need it. But everything you've been working toward, everything you want to build, let this be a start." Jaden stared at him, stunned, then pulled him into a tight hug. "I don't know how you did it, but thank you. I won't waste this." "I know," Malik said softly. "That's why it's yours." He stepped back and looked at the car once more. It no longer felt heavy, no longer felt tied to humiliation. It felt like possibility, transformation, a story that could be rewritten into something good. Jaden slid into the driver's seat, face glowing. "You sure about this?" 100%, Malik replied. Jaden revved the engine, pure joy radiating from him. Malik stepped back, smiling as the man who had once felt lost found a spark of hope. The Ferrari sped off down the street, its engine roaring like a promise. Malik watched it until the taillights disappeared, and then he let out a long breath. For the first time since the incident, he felt something warm settle inside him. He had turned a moment of disrespect into a lesson, a moment of injustice into strength, a moment of cruelty into something generous. It didn't erase what happened. It didn't excuse Victor, but it reclaimed the narrative, not for revenge, but for dignity, for family, for the freedom to choose how his story ended. And that, Malik knew, was the real victory. He walked back toward the quiet street, hands in his pockets, head held high. The world wasn't perfect. It wasn't always fair. But tonight, he had proven something to himself, something more valuable than any luxury car. He had proven that dignity was a power no one could take from him. And as he disappeared into the night, he carried that power with him, steady as his heartbeat, unshakable as his resolve.